anyways, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you can hear me well. Um, so on behalf of Democrats Abroad, Mexico Country Committee, the Spain Country Committee, and the Global Hispanic Caucus, I'd like to welcome you all to this online event. If you don't know, Democrats Abroad is the official arm of the Democratic Party for Americans who live outside of the United States. And we have a very simple goal, that is to give the citizens who are abroad a voice in the government. My name is Cynthia Romero. I am the co-chair of the Hispanic Caucus, and I would like to introduce you to Bill Valdez, who along with Jeffrey Vargas will discuss an important issue, why your vote matters. Bill Valdez has served at the highest levels of government, including the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Currently, he is the board president at the Alliance of Latino Leadership and Policy, ALLP, which works to expand the participation of Latinos in public service. Latinos are severely underrepresented and in the federal government, and ALLP is working to change that. Jeffrey Vargas has held numerous positions in government, including National Nuclear Security Administration and Commodity Trading Commission. He is the president and CEO of Generationology, which has the goal of creating and training leaders within a workplace culture of collaboration. I am very thankful that both of you are sharing your knowledge and your time with us. For those of you who are in the audience, before we get to the presentation, all the information for contacting anyone from Democrats Abroad will be displayed on the in the chat box. So we will have links and we will have all our emails listed there. And we will also have a Q&A once the presentation is over. So you can ask hopefully about the presentation, but if you have to ask any of us individual questions, you can go ahead and do that. And so now I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Bill and Jeffrey. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent, excellent. Hey, Cynthia, I just want to begin by saying a big thank you to you, Carlos, Hope, Catherine, Andrew, and so many of you who took the time to strategize, plan, and now today to execute this really important conversation about why your vote, my vote, why all of our votes really matter. In full disclosure, I've probably known Bill, well, since I was skinny and my hair was a different color, probably 25 years or so, and had the pleasure of working alongside him when he was a senior political appointee at the Department of Energy. And he and I collaborated on Hispanic outreach activities and really made the connection between the Latino community and the Department of Energy real. And so I'll be seasoning my conversation here with Bill, knowing the background and the engagements he has had. You know, one of the things that we know up front as we really talk about why our vote matters is that there is a real crisis with respect to having the right kind of and the numbers of Latino representation in the federal government itself. Look, we know that in the United States, Latinos make about 20% of the population, and they're about 18% of the civilian labor force, but they're just under 10% of the federal government. And in fact, not only are they just less than 10%, the majority of Latinos are clustered in lower level positions. So positions that Bill had as a senior executive in the federal government, a career senior executive, or positions that I had. I was, was in charge of, I was a chief learning officer for the nation's nuclear weapons program. You can look to your left and to your right, you can look forward and backward, and you will not see any Latinos in those kinds of positions. And that should not be the case. That gives us a moment of pause and crisis. And two other things that are taking place that are just so important to recognize. One is that, we're at a position in time where apathy is real. People are so busy living their lives and going forward in their personal activities. Why does my vote matter? And if it does, why? And there's another movement afoot, which is really about folks that are actively working on the suppression of our vote, making it difficult to register and making it difficult for people to exercise what is their right. So anyway, you all get me worked up here, but I'm excited to talk with Bill and get all of us in this conversation about why your vote matters. And so as we begin this sort of dance, two things. Can you make me a co-host so I can share a screen? Forgot to ask you to do that. And then we'll get ourselves going. But one other thing I'll say about Bill before we do have a PowerPoint kind of help us walk through this conversation. One thing that I will say about Bill is he is always open to a spirited conversation. So if you have thoughts, ideas, etc., you'll be able to do that. So who's the host? Because I need you to make me, I can share the screen. We'll wait a second while that takes place.
You can do it on the participants tab.
Okay. No such luck yet.
Cynthia, are you on that? Cynthia,
So
do you
while-
need help? You need help?
Carlos, you're hosting, correct?
Though, do you know that? Yeah, let me see
I
how
think
can I
it's you.
do
So
it.
you just go
Oh.
on to the participant view, and you're able to click next to the name and give them host access.
Okay,
I'm sorry, Cynthia, I thought it was.
No worries.
Okay,
That's why I answered. I just realized that.
okay.
let me check. I should have done it before. 1 second.
Well, you can make them host, but I don't know if you can make them co-host. Have two hosts.
Yeah, you can do both. While Carlos is working that engine, one other thing that I will mention with respect to the presentation is that for folks who want a copy of it, you're welcome to reach out to Cynthia or to Bill, and we'll be happy to provide you with the content and information. And ALP also has a report. I touched on just a few factoids about it with respect to Latino underrepresentation in the federal government. It's an issue that I've been working on for probably 20 years or so. And so I'm happy to share with you. I'm an economist by training, and some of you are deep dive folks, love data, right? So if you want more information on it, we're happy to make that real for you. Okay, let's.
I think it should work now, Jeff. Let's check it out to see.
Okay. Nope, there's not yet. No. So quick logistics thought on my my name. There's 3 dots. You can click on those 3 dots, and then there'll be an option. And there'll be one to say make co-host. You can click on that.
Yeah, the thing is that I'm trying to do that actually, but doesn't I can't see it. Doesn't appear. Am I the host? Yes.
Put the on the top right hand side of your screen, there should be a word that says view. Put the view into gallery, and then you will see all the names of everybody in small boxes. When you hover above the name of a person's picture, you will see 3 dots.
Yeah, I see it, but I click it and I can't see that option. I don't see it. I can't see it. I don't know if I.
You're the one that opened the room, didn't you?
No, it was Hope. I think maybe Hope. You were there when I logged in.
I'm not the host.
It should say in participants, you know, who's the host, you know, an H or something. H.
No.
Global IT set this up, is that correct?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, Karen. Yeah, it's not my.
Jeffrey.
Hi, everybody. This is Miguel.
Hey, Miguel.
Hi. There should be, if Global set this up, they should have given you a host code. You enter the code and then you become the host.
No, that's WebEx. That's not Zoom, I don't think.
Let me see.
No.
Yes. Who has the host key? Because we can play without the key.
Yeah, you need a key. Yeah.
Don't you have the key, Carlos?
No, that I'm aware of.
Let me ask Karen. I'll be right back real quick.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
messaging.
in the
him.
interest of time,
Why don't
possibly,
we-
Bill, yeah.
Yeah. You know, the reason why I wanted to do this is because the reason we formed the Alliance of Latino Leadership and Policy was that the Latino community really is not getting its fair share of the federal dollars that come out every year in the annual appropriations. There are about $3.2 trillion in discretionary funds that go out every year for health, education, national defense, science and technology, you name it, everything that the federal government funds. And those decisions are made by people like I was, one of the senior executives in the federal government, about program funding, program direction, how the programs are created and how they're run. And if you're not at the table when those decisions are made, then you're not going to get your fair share of the funds. You're going to be on the menu instead of being at the table. So our goal, and let me state up front that the ALLP is a 501c3 non-partisan organization. And so we're going to make the same offer to have this presentation, slightly modified a bit probably, to the Republicans abroad, as you will note. I don't hide the fact that I was am a Democrat. I was a political appointee in the Clinton administration. And I was actually nominated by President Biden to be the Undersecretary for Management at the Department of Homeland Security. But that fell to some immigration policies and immigration politics. And so I never confirmed in that position. This really isn't a partisan issue. It is a nonpartisan issue. And so it's important for all of us to do what we can to impress upon our various communities why their vote matters, because it has a direct result, direct impact on people. As I'll say in my PowerPoint, once I'm able to show my PowerPoint. Actually, you know what, Carlos, you have the PowerPoint.
We do.
Yeah, but it appears that I don't think I'm the host. I can't share my screen either. So I just text the person in charge of the Zoom account to see if she can help us. Yeah, one second.
Carlos, just look at WhatsApp. I just sent you the host key.
Perfect.
Miguel is our techie in Costa Rica, so.
Yeah, thank you, Miguel.
I am not a techie, just to clarify. I just because I'm the Youth Caucus chair, I get to host these meetings, but I'm not a techie by far. But thank you, Nelica.
Well, sometimes the phrase "it takes a village" becomes real. And so I think together we will figure all this out. The technical side will take care of the technical side. But I know, Bill, in conversation, you've said many a time that there's, more than just one reason why your vote matters. What are, 4 or 5 thoughts as to just to sort of begin the conversation? If the PowerPoint comes up, then we can get the details. And if not, we'll continue to work through it. What are 4 or 5 thoughts why vote matters?
Well, there's 5 specific reasons and one general one why I think your vote matters. The first is that elections have consequences. Every time, we change administrations, you change administration policies. And I don't think it takes, a political scientist or a rocket scientist to observe what happens during those occasions. Second, squeaker national elections are now the new normal in the United States. Since Bush was elected in 2000, going up through our current election in 2020, the elections have gotten closer and closer, more divided, and the winner of the popular vote doesn't always win the election. George W. Bush didn't his first time out. Trump didn't. So, you know, it's a matter of that the votes actually count a lot more nowadays. And third, key local state elections have dire consequences. I mean, you know, if you read the paper like I do, and you see the, you know, the riots that are happening at school boards, for example, you know, even in, you know, places like, you know, Texas, where you can't get, you know, sensible gun control after an event like the Uvalde massacre, you know, school massacre. You know, so the local state elections are really important, and they are getting as close in many cases as national elections. And then your vote, you know, elects the people who set the national priorities. I mean, it seems simple to think about that, but whenever you send somebody to Congress or you put somebody in the White House, they are empowered to set the national priorities. And if we're sending a bunch of knuckleheads and clowns up to the House and in the Senate and the White House, then you can expect, you know, knucklehead and clownish kinds of policies and programs. And then finally, you know, flexing your voting muscles, as I said, results in dollars, programs, and policies for the Latino community in the U.S. And currently, it's well documented that the Latino community is underserved. We're not getting our fair share of federal financing. And the federal government is the main culprit for that, because they are funding priorities by the people who are asking for the dollars. And that's the major corporations, you know, the people who are in power already. And our community is not getting our fair share of the money. So, Jeff, I see that the host key is invalid.
We are going to do it.
I'm sorry,
We'll just do it differently.
I tried the host key and it says it's invalid. Carlos, if you look under the participants list, it says invite, mute me, and claim host. See if that works for you. It didn't work for me.
It didn't work so far. Let me try it again.
Okay, you know,
I
I've
think
done
there was a
some-
hand up. We want maybe take, yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, something that I've done in low bandwidth situations before is drop a link to a Google slide presentation, and then people can go through it. We lose the ability to like see what you're pointing at and everything else, but it does give us the opportunity to look at it offline. So I don't know if that will work for you, but it would work for me.
Yeah, you know, a thought possibly, so just so we don't take too much time trying to figure out the technical aspects of it, is you know, we can go through the content itself, have a robust conversation, and then provide a copy to everybody as we go forward. And then again, as people have questions, possibly it would be able we can have that conversation. So that way we're all staying in sort of the Zoom bubble for at least a little bit, and then move forward. I do want to note there's a couple things that you said, Bill, that are really striking, and I think it leads into a more detailed conversation on these 5 points. But you know, when you were a senior leader in the Office of Science, and you know, and For those who don't know, Bill was a political appointee, and then he became a career federal senior executive. So he's seen the top level of the leadership world of government from two different angles. But when you talk about that the dollars that come into the Latino community and our capacity to connect with the Latino community from those kinds of program offices, what are some of the real challenges that you saw that, being Latino, you were able to be at the table, raise thoughts or ideas, give voice to, that sort of made a difference? I want people to get an idea of how you've been literally in the trenches of this thing from both a strategic 30,000 foot level, and you've also rolled up your sleeves in its operational context as well.
Yeah, great question. Because I mean, this isn't a question of racism or it's more unintended consequences and a matter of ignorance. Let me give you one example that was really frustrating to me. I ran the department's scientific and technical workforce development programs at one point, and we spend hundreds of millions of dollars at universities and national labs developing the next generation of scientists and engineers. Very little of that money was going to Hispanic serving institutions. Very little of it was going to Latino students. And so I tried to redirect that and was told that I could not do it because everything had to be decided on merit. There couldn't be any kind of preference for, minority serving institutions or other organizations. And so very frustrating. Here I was in a position to actually direct money to the Latino community, and I was not able to do it. So, Jeff, you succeeded.
I did not. All glory and honor goes to Hope and company and Cynthia. They worked it, man. They got it going, and so we're just benefiting. So, aplauso to everybody who worked it, and so that gives us context. But I'm so glad that we started with this conversation, Bill, about the hundreds of millions of dollars and how, again, as you said, it had to be based on merit and your frustration in knowing that the schools were out there, could do the job, and yet there was we don't know about them, therefore we're going to continue to fund the areas that we know about. These are real activities, and so just again, flexing on your point about flexing our vote muscles really do matter in resulting on where our program dollars, and we'll get more into that, but I think that's a good way to start the conversation. As you said, this whole idea of restoring trust in government and our democracy. Tell us a little bit more about your thoughts in that area. Yeah,
well, you can look at this image in one of two ways. Either you're trying to put trust back together, or you've broken it, apart. And I tend to look at, we're trying to put trust back together. There was a recent Pew poll showing that trust in the federal government is now down to about, in the low 20 percentile among American public. Congress is even worse. Congress is in the teens. And the reason for that lack of trust is because people don't trust, the federal government, Congress, Supreme Court now. Their numbers are in the toilet as well in terms of trust. So the only way to restore trust, in my mind, in government, in our democracy, is by voting, and voting in the right way. And so we need to be less hyperbolic, and maybe we can restore that trust. So going back to the idea of elections have consequences, Just look at the 2020 election. I mean, Trump won the 2016 vote without winning by, he won because of 5 swing states, 50,000 votes. And look at the consequences of that. The Supreme Court will be hard right conservative for the next 2-3 decades. We had the January 6th insurrection. There's madness at the border. And then in 2000, George Bush won the election because he carried Florida. That was the deciding electoral vote by less than 600 votes. And what resulted from that? The war in Afghanistan, people dying. You can see the, direct lineage to somebody like DeSantis. And so, these elections have enormous consequences. And they were just decided by very, very few votes. And then
your
when you
linkage,
talk
Bill,
about
between trust and consequences is real.
yeah.
Ironically, McKinsey just came out with a report and they identified, what do people in America trust most? Grocery stores. What do they trust least? But the bottom was the federal government and then the state government as well. So, this whole concept that, you're helping remind us about consequences gives us just a moment of pause, because the idea that our vote matters is really clear. And if we choose to sit on the sidelines, hence consequences like this show up.
Yep. No, it's sobering when you look at it. And so in my experience, you can have good policies gone awry, like in the pullout from Afghanistan under Biden, or you can have bad policies gone terrifically awry, like the decision to go to war against Iraq. But these are made by people who were elected to office, by very, very slim margins.
Talk a little bit more about the elections becoming squeakers in these key districts and those national dire consequences, really.
Yeah, well, if you last year in the midterm elections, the Democrats lost the House, and they lost the House because the Republicans were able to flip 5 seats, most of them, amazingly enough, in New York, in what were before blue districts, places where Biden had been elected. Those 5 seats were flipped by 6,670 votes out of nearly 108 million votes counted. So you don't need any closer elections, and so now look what we have. We have the House of Representatives controlled by Republicans with a very thin margin. They only have a 4-seat margin, and McCarthy can't control the House anymore. So these squeaker elections, if you look, at the past, 2, 4, 6 presidential elections, were all decided by, very slim margins. And some of them, they were not the winners of the popular vote. So
when you stay on that for a second, the what's coming up before us is this concept of a government shutdown. And if the Speaker of the House cannot get the votes, even to identify something that could pass, even if it's an interim bill, what are your thoughts about what could take place if we have a government shutdown this date and time?
Well, I mean, the financial consequences, aren't terribly dire, because Congress always then appropriates the money and people get paid, but it's more the disruption to the functioning of government. For example, Biden was successful in getting, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars for infrastructure improvements. Under a government shutdown, those projects basically stop because the funding stops. And so people will, lose jobs. There'll be, the national parks will be, shut down. But the bigger, consequence is just, again, the American people will see this clown show and they will lose further trust in government that we can responsibly govern, in the US.
When we look at any trust rubric, we know that people have a hard time following, executing, and moving forward with people that they don't trust. So trust becomes essential pathway. What's this chart telling us, Bill?
Well, this is Biden's paths to victory. And this was prepared by Jim Messina, who was the campaign manager for Barack Obama in 2012 when he won re-election. And what the Democrats have done is mapped out what the potential paths of victory are. And it comes down to some very close races in very close in states, that could flip back and forth between Republican and Democrat. And so this kind of analysis informs, us to know that, the vast majority of the electoral votes are already set. Nobody's going to win an election like, Ronald Reagan won in 1984, where he won virtually all the electoral votes, all the states. Now it's an evenly divided country, and you have to really strategize and figure out how you can get the vote out in your swing states. And so the Democrats are already doing that. And if you live in one of those, or you can vote in one of those swing states, for goodness sake, get out there and vote. Hence,
once again, while your vote absolutely matters. Yeah. Talk a little bit about the local and state consequences that we have in front of us.
It has just been amazing to watch what's happening out there in the country. You have school boards that are being assaulted and having to get security guards out there, and a lot of them are getting voted out for not supporting the very conservative things. You have Josh Kaul, who was the Democrat attorney general in Wisconsin, saying it's going to be a close election in 2022. It's huge when it comes to our freedoms. And then what happens? The GOP threatens to impeach a Wisconsin Supreme Court justice because they're afraid they're going to lose their supermajority if she gets on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, the anti-vaxxers, were strong during the pandemic. Kentucky, higher education cuts, once, they, started, looking at ways to balance their budget. They did it at the expense of higher education. And then, there's the whole transgender, anti-transgender, anti-LGBTQ movement that's now going at the local state level. And these are just tip of the iceberg kinds of consequences. Once one of the things that's happened, particularly in states like Wisconsin or even Alabama, is that the gerrymandering has been so extreme that the Republicans have been able to develop supermajorities and then vote against the will of their own people. For example, in Tennessee, the supermajority would not consider gun control even after the school shootings that they had there. In Alabama, the supermajority has been trying to, one third of the state population in Alabama is Black, but they only have one House seat. So the Supreme Court sent the redistricting back, and so the Republicans said, no, we like it the way we are. They sent the redistricting map back up. The Supreme Court, a lower court just rejected it again. They just absolutely refused to give the Black population there another seat, because they're afraid that they won't have, the supermajority that they want. So, I mean, it's things like that at the local and state level that are just really tragic. And these elections just aren't decided by that much. And so, everybody needs to get out and vote in their local and state elections.
When you bring up the Alabama example, I think that you make a great case from the 30,000 foot to the ground level. Because as you mentioned, that case in particular, the Supreme Court ruled on and said, hey, folks, no, you can't gerrymander and redraw your districts. And I know we don't have a chart now, but you're welcome to, folks to look it up on your own to actually see how they drew those districts. I mean, it's a puzzle piece that gives folks pause. But to your point, Bill, and I think it's one that, deserves just a lot of pause and reflection, is that some folks again say, well, all right, well, maybe on the national level, my vote matters, but does it really matter on the local level? And what I'm hearing you say is, without question, it matters just as much.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And for Dems abroad, you may think that, for example, you don't live in New Mexico any longer, but yeah, I imagine you have friends and family there, and, they're being impacted by this sort of stuff on a daily basis. So this is just a summary of, the last, few election cycles and how it's swing states are floating back and forth. The votes are close in all of them. You have, but it's just become a fact of life that in these, subset of states, we're going to continue to see considerable, electoral shifts with very small numbers of votes.
So razor thin isn't a conceptual sort of place. It's actual, and whether it's for the presidential election, electing our senators, governors, local officials, just the factoid, it's razor thin, and one would argue that speaks again to the importance of getting out your vote and participating.
Yep, among other things that we'll discuss in a moment. So your vote really elects the people who set the national priorities, and that seems obvious, right? So in my my backyard, we have Glenn Youngkin, who is a Trump wannabe, and he's being talked about as an alternative to Trump. He had no political experience, ran out of the blue. He's in a blue state now. Virginia is a blue state, and yet he won the election primarily because of his stance on education issues. Those don't talk about racism or rewriting history. And then you have Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Alabama, who's the former Auburn head coach, who is recognized, I think, as perhaps the dumbest senator, we currently have serving, beat a good Democrat in Alabama. And now he's put a hold on, military promotions. And he doesn't care. He's doing it because the federal government, the military allows women to go out of state for reproductive services if they're forbidden in that state, and they'll pay for it, out of state. They'll pay for their travel. He wants to change that policy. And don't even get me started on George Santos. He was elected in one of those swing states, and by a small margin, he kind of snuck up on people, and we have him actually voting in the Congress right now. And then my favorite, Three Musketeers, right? Boebert, Gates, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Who sends people like this to the government? And they do this, while the world burns. We've got huge national problems, and we have climate change, we have the war in Ukraine, we have immigration, we have immigration issues. We have a whole host of national and international issues, and these are the knuckleheads who are working on your behalf because somebody decided they wanted to vote for them and elect them to office.
Yeah, people matters, policy matters, and we really got to flex our voting muscle. What are your thoughts on that, Bill?
Well, I mentioned the Uvalde shooting, but there have been, you can count them up, so many active shooters in schools since 1970. There was the Newtown, Connecticut one where 22 kids were killed, and kids 10 years and younger, babies, same as at Uvalde. And yet we can't get a national gun policy, background checks, and then the federal discretionary budget, a good majority of it, $1.1 trillion, is going to war and weapons, police and prisons, and detention and deportation. That's just the wrong set of national priorities. And then, just recently, President Biden tried to get, loan forgiveness for student loans. And the Supreme Court, ruled against it, said, no, people have to pay that back. Well, actually, that wasn't the real ruling. It was that Biden exceeded his authority. But on all of these issues, our community is affected and impacted. Student loan debt for Latinos is skyrocketing because they don't come from wealthy families, by and large. There are a lot of first generation people going to college, and so they're burdened with up to the average debt burden for kids coming out of an undergraduate is like $60,000, even if you go to a public school. So it's, the national policies, are, really important, but it's the voters who, put the people in place that then direct the federal government to then, set the, right priorities. And our community is certainly not getting those funds, and is certainly impacted by the lack of focus on the right priorities.
And priorities matter. You can't execute against priorities that are not articulated, and if the priorities do not align with and support a community, then we all lose out. I will mention, one thing that I think, as we talk about school shootings and how it affects all of us. I live not too far from Columbine, which is, sort of where this conversation began. And one of the things that that I know, and I've been to Columbine High School, my sons had games out there, is that there's security everywhere. And why is that? Because believe it or not, here, this happened, 24 years ago or so. There are people who come to Columbine as copycats and wannabes, and they're still pushing, this agenda of violence. And so when we think about setting national priorities, Bill, and having the right, you set us up well with this conversation, electing the right folks at the national level, electing them at the local level, and then speak a little bit to having the right folks who are federal career employees at the right jobs and the kind of differences they can make in the work that they do.
Yep. So, I mean, how can you, and I'm talking to everybody in the audience and anybody else who will view this video, how can you make a difference? And I think that there are 6 different ways that you can do that. The first is targeted voting nationally. This is something that I've started doing, and if you do nothing else, target your votes for the people that you want, and this also applies regionally, locally, that you need to make sure that you're voting in the for the right candidates. Vote locally, particularly in nonpartisan elections. Most school board elections are nonpartisan, and so I think it's really important to vote locally. Give small donations to the candidates of your choice. And by small, $25, $10. That really helps the candidates. It qualifies them for other funding. It helps. It makes you part of the process. You don't have to give major money to any candidates, but give small donations. I do this all the time, $25, $50, to candidates that I want to support. Get involved in telephone banks. The campaigns are always eager to have, volunteers for telephone banks. And then as much as you can, stay involved locally, to have awareness of the issues that people are that you're of the issues you're interested in. And then finally, join ALLP. I'll selfishly say, because we're working on these kinds of issues, but also some of the good government groups out there that that are interested in this, but just become part of the movement. There's during the election cycles, there are a number of Latino voting initiatives that come out, and so we can, I think you should get involved in those. And as Mother Teresa says, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. And those many ripples start by your affirmative action.
So, Bill, as we sort of end this conversation, can you just give us your thoughts on kind of what you see the future holds if everybody does their part, if they actually take what you've talked about and then execute against that idea and really ensure that their vote matters? What could happen?
Yeah. So first, I just think it's critical that we reelect President Biden. So if you live in one of these states, or you can vote in one of these states, get involved, and because these are the states that are going to decide the next election. But beyond that, Carlos, we talked about the fact that some Dems abroad, have issues getting involved in local elections. Maybe you could say something about that.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, no, mainly the thing is that, of course, we sometimes facing problems registering to vote. We live abroad, and sometimes we have difficulties in receiving the ballot and casting the vote because each state has their own rules. So that may be challenging a lot of times. For example, I vote in Florida, and I have to send my vote by fax, right, or by mail. But sometimes, yeah, that's very challenging because that might take a lot of time. I'm not sure if I got there, and a lot of people that depend on where they're voting, they are facing these challenges. So that's something that we're trying to solve. And one of the tools that we came out with that helps us register to vote is voteFromAbroad.org. That's also in Spanish, and that definitely helps us registering to vote. So yeah, that's yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
Bill, this is Kathy. Another barrier for many of our members is that many states do not allow you to vote in down ballot races if you do not intend to return to the state. So in other words, you were born there, but you're not going back there. Well, you can vote in federal elections, but you're not able to vote down ballot.
So how do they know you're not coming back? Do you have to affirmatively say?
Yes, you are asked whether you are returning when you when you register to vote, and then when you request a ballot. Well, it depends on the state at which point, but you are required to affirm to the state that you intend to come back, which of course a lot of people don't want to do because that's lying.
Yeah,
that's I'm sorry. If I may jump in also with that. A lot of people are hesitant to say that they're willing to return to the country or to that state, particularly because it does imply that they may have to be liable for paying taxes. And since the way to do taxes from abroad is convoluted, is to say it nicely, it's just extremely horrible, and it's not easy to do. A lot of people do not want to say that they're going to be returning because they don't want to pay taxes that they're unable to do from abroad. So it also affects their ability to then therefore receive a ballot that has all the elections. And so a lot of people are only limited to the presidential elections, which means that during those 4 years, they're losing a lot of ability to voice their opinions.
And I think, Cynthia, this is exactly why, and I just want to sort of applaud you as we end the formal part and then open up for questions and answers, but applaud, you and Carlos and team for having this organization because, again, when people have questions and thoughts and ideas, this is where that apathy comes into play. And they say to themselves, well, because all these things are hard, and they are hard, then I just won't vote. But then you counter that with the argument sort of that Bill made today. And it's like, well, sometimes in life, like, I got 3 kids, 16, 14, and 11, like, you got to do the hard stuff because it matters that much as well. So today's been just a fantastic conversation, learning from Bill, and kind of, I think for all of us, just rejuvenating our spirit, reminding ourselves and those that are listening that, listen, our vote matters. The execution of our vote really does matter. And thank goodness that there's organizations like Democrats Abroad, that the Alliance for Latino Leadership and Policy, I'm also a board member of, can have a relationship with, and sort of together we can build the kind of synergy that's important in order to see votes not only be counted, but be exercised. And so I think it starts there. But I know there's probably some questions, thoughts, and ideas that you may have for Bill. So let's stop the sharing of the document so we can see each other. Turn your cameras on, and we can see each other, and continue this for a time going forward. And I think, Andrew, you had a thought or an idea you wanted to share, sir.
Yes, thank you, but I want to follow the protocol that we have. We have people that had raised their hands, so I'm going to go into the queue where I want to. So Hope, I know you're doing a great job with this, so let's go through that process.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I'm holding the queue. If you have a question, please type in the queue, star hand up, and I will put you in the queue. One thing I did want to let Bill and Jeff know, one thing that DA does work on, and most recently we did this in New Jersey, in states that we do have the governor and the legislatures and do not have an intent to return, we work to change that so that all voters can vote down ballot. That right had been taken away from New Jersey voters when Christie was governor. And we have state teams that worked really diligently with the legislature and got that passed again. So all voters in New Jersey can now vote down ballot. And we are working on other states and always try to do that. But it is a challenge for many of our voters. Okay, I am going to go to Alona.
Hi, I just wanted to add, first of all, thank you very much for this program, and it should be considered a year of Hispanic heritage support here in Mexico, certainly. Just a month is not enough. The other is just to add to the voting constraints that we have here in Mexico. We have been proposing to people to add that they are intending to return so they can get the down ballot, but some states require that you have to have a current ID to do that. So this is just another constraint besides the tax issue, which is very critical for us. That was it.
Okay, Miguel? You may be muted.
Yeah, let me turn my camera on just real quick so they can see a face. Let's see. Hi, what's up? Hello. So I was, are you familiar with Vox, the VOX, the YouTube channel?
That's a YouTube.
I've heard of it.
Okay. Well, they do excellent explainer videos. So they delve into the subject and they do a very thorough and deep explanation. And 2 days ago or 3 days ago, they published a video on how Democrats lost Florida. And I was looking at the video, and one of the reasons Democrats lost Florida, according to them, is that we lost a Hispanic vote. Most Republican targeting and ads and rhetoric is tying the Democratic Party with socialism. And a lot of the Cubans and the Venezuelans that are living in Florida are believing, they're drinking the Kool-Aid, and they're making the false equivalence that the Democratic Party will end up like Hugo Chavez or like Fidel Castro in So my question for you is, how do we fight that? Because I find it really, really hard to convince anybody who's lived in Cuba or Venezuela or Nicaragua that the word socialism or being to the left doesn't necessarily equate to what they lived in their home country. So how do we fight that? That's my question. And hopefully, I saw the list on your screen. I don't see Ohio on that list. Ohio, I still have faith that we can still be a swing state. I'm an Ohio voter, by the way, and I still have the belief that we can still win the state of Florida. Ron DeSantis won Florida in 2018 by 0.5 percentage point. I think, what's the other guy? Bill, the other guy, the senator, the bald guy.
Scott.
Tim Scott.
Rick Scott. Tim Scott is from South Carolina. Rick Scott won also by 0.5 percentage point. So I still believe Florida is competitive. As a member of the Democratic Party, I believe we should still be investing in Florida. So I'll just shut up and let you speak on how we win back Florida.
Well, thanks for that, Miguel.
Make a comment? I'm sorry.
The same phenomenon happened in 2020 in the Rio Grande Valley, where my family comes from. where a lot of the socialist nonsense, came up again. And we lost one House seat that was traditional Democratic there. And we hoped, that, Trump, that we would be closer to Trump in Texas, but that kind of messaging really worked against us, particularly, with the people, from in the Valley. The way to fight this is, number one, the Democratic Party has to do a much better job of messaging. We were hampered in 2020 by the fact that Bernie Sanders, was a leading contender. And so that's what they were pointing to, the Bernie Sanders wing. If you think about it, it's ironic that Latinos would be, persuaded by that argument when you have the most autocratic president in our recent history, Donald Trump, on the ballot. But it just comes down to better messaging and better, boots on the ground for the Democrats in Florida and South Texas, and wherever that comes up, wherever that kind of messaging comes up.
Andrew?
Right, thank you. So I love Miguel's energy, by the way, and I'd like to see Miguel work with us in reference to getting that younger vote out at the Democrats abroad, because I really think there's a large younger generation out there, particularly the nomadic groups that are out there running around and moving in different countries while working for companies that I think could really be messaging. And we're doing that in Spain, by the way. So Bill, my question to you is more related with alliances, right? As you were saying earlier, I think part of the things, and again, I'm new to Democrats abroad. There's a lot of folks here that have much more years of experience. This is my first year outside of Virginia. I was an elections official in Virginia. I know that in Virginia, because I own property, I can vote all the way down to city council. So I have that, and I will always keep that. I will never let that go. I plan to return to the United States at some point. Other people, as indicated earlier, have made a choice to deroot and move overseas forever. So they don't understand that they de-link themselves in relative terms to down ballot versus just federal. And so we still got to get the message out to get them to vote federally, because as you said, and in your presentation, excellent presentation, by the way, in reference to the numbers are so small. We make the difference. Democrats abroad, as I understand it, make a significant difference through the states at the federal level in the numbers. So that's a positive. So my question is back to what I asked, is the alliances that we need to build, what do you recommend as an example? Based upon your organization, nonpartisan, is it something that we can work together to communicate to the broader audience so they become members of your organization, support your organization? So as you go out and support the candidates that we need to get in office to support the issues, is something we can do. Now, again, I don't know the limitations on the DA side, Democrats broad side, but I think that's kind of a question I like to have of how we can do that.
Yeah. So, you already have the, working relationship with the DNC, and the DNC, every election cycle has, its work. It works with the groups like the, ALLP to, get the vote out. But the problem with the DNC is that they are staffed by people who come in and out virtually every election cycle. So there's not much permanence there and not much institutional memory. So I would highly recommend that you guys form, a relationship with other groups, such as LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, Unidos, and And then there are several groups that pop up that some are very specific, like, for, Latin American country, people from Latin America. And I can go back and I'll send you guys a list of some of the groups that we worked with in the 2020 election cycle, who pop up every 4 years for the presidential elections, that you guys could also, form an alliance with. So yeah, I mean, it's really important that you get with all those people, because it just extends your reach and also their reach as well.
Thank you, Bill. And I think that's important. I know Kathy told us is the chair for DA Spain, and I know she understands the bigger, broader picture of DA in reference to these type of alliances. So I'll take that offline with her in reference to working it out. But I agree that we need to be. I agree with you in the sense that, in being a former DNC member and being part of the Democratic Party for many years, working since the Clinton administration as part of the kind of the state Virginia delegate, and being involved at that level, that if we don't kind of at the Democrats abroad, because if some Americans are not going to go back to America, but still want to be a significant player in relative terms to voting, then I think these different alliances make more sense. Why? Because they can literally, as you said in your strategies, if I give you $25, I feel that I'm helping you to do what is right in reference to whatever state that is, whatever election it is, to help us get the right people in place. So when I vote at the federal level, I'm voting for the Democrat at the federal level. You guys are helping me at the local level to make sure that the legislatures, that the state senates, and whatever level that you go down to are represented properly. And that then there's a reflection of those overseas that are not coming home in that kind of in the reflection of those votes of those people representing the bigger picture of the United States. And our caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, I would even say to the Veterans Caucus, to any other caucus that's out there. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to take the two last. We've got Nelke, and I'm sorry I accidentally muted you when I was trying to ask you to unmute. I missed the button. And Edgar will be the final question. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm a progressive and, member of, Our Revolution, and AOC and Bernie are my heroes, really. And I live in Costa Rica, and I think Costa Rica, there's a statue here, Garantías Sociales. Public excellent, well, actually it was excellent, public education, healthcare. And so those are things that Americans, want too. And so I think you talked about the Democratic Party messaging. I think they should run on that. Medicare for all, that's a big thing with the progressives, and public education. And that's what Latinos want too. But I know that, socialism is a big boogeyman. I lived in Indiana, Republican state. So, but now I vote in Colorado. My brother was there. I can't stand it, Indiana. Anyway, so that's how I feel. The same issues that people want here in Costa Rica, the Latinos over there, that will vote too, because so there are several progressive Latinos have been, elected in Texas. About Greg Casas, I think his name. Gregorio Casas, I think is his name. Anyway. What's your comment?
Did you have a question or?
Well, yes, that's what you think. You talked about messaging, and so what do you think about the messaging?
Okay, thanks.
Well, I mean, the Democrats have messaged all of that, Obamacare, and but the political reality is that the Republicans are much better at reverse messaging,
That's the problem.
what we're trying to do. And we've sort of gotten better, for example, on reproductive rights, the that's an issue that's going to really resonate, in the 2024 election. It did in the 2023 midterms. But it's really difficult. It's really difficult in this environment to do anything that smacks of socialism, or that can be reframed as socialism, because that's what the Republicans will do immediately.
That's the problem, yeah.
And it's just the current political reality. Well, thank you all very much for listening, and I want to say that I learned a lot from your questions, and so thank you again, Carlos and company, for suggesting this, and had a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you very much, Jeff. It was a pleasure. And yeah, and I guess that after this, we are more aware why we have to vote and how important it is. And every vote really counts. So let's go for it. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Carlos and Cynthia and everybody else.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Well done, Jeff. Good job, Jeff.
Yes,
For everybody else who's online, if you have any questions, I have been putting all the links there. I've also included my email at some point, so please feel free to go ahead and contact us there if you have any questions. I've also provided the links for both Bill and Jeff, so you can contact them. You should actually look at their websites. The information that they provide is actually pretty great. And thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to Hope for taking over this for us. Really appreciate it.
Can you send the link by email? Because I'm sorry, I don't know how to get from the chat to the.
No problem. I have you in my email, so I can send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well done, everybody. Well done.
Okay, yes, well done. Yes, great, very informative.
Thank you, everyone.
Adios.
Thank you. Adios. Hasta
Bye,
luego.
bye, bye.
Hasta luego.
Nos vemos.